The day has finally come. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. We've talked so much about this release the past year. We've been waiting and waiting, but finally, I've got aged and signed in this box, and we've got VOS of the Adam Jones signature 1979 Les Paul Custom. Let's start with the VOS one. So, in case you missed any of my other videos about this topic, this is a recreation of Adam Jones' 1979 Les Paul Custom. And if you're not familiar with who Adam Jones is, he's the guitarist for the band Tool. And Tool's kind of an interesting band. You can't really categorize them into metal, you can't categorize them into ambient music. It's kind of like a mixture between everything. But in my opinion, what makes Tool Tool is not necessarily the guitar work. I mean, it's fantastic. It's all about the bass. But Adam has been well known for using Silverburst Les Paul Customs. He's the reason why people think that they sound slightly different, because he likes to start funny little rumors like that the silver in the paint changes the tone, makes it darker. So he's kind of a funny prankster in that aspect. But one thing is for sure, Silverburst Les Paul Customs are really cool. The first prototypes were done up in 1977. The first official year for the run is in 1978, but that first year where they just made a whole boatload of them was 1979. That's why a lot of times people will say, oh, 79 was the first year. All right, buddy, that's enough history talk. Let's go ahead and open this thing. Starting with our case here, they actually did the Silverburst finish on the outside. But unfortunately, there was a defect. TKL, when they made these things, they didn't let the finish cure long enough. So if you feel yours and it's kind of sticky feeling, like this one, unfortunately, I've heard that some people have been getting lucky and contacting them or Gibson and getting a replacement case. So I think in about 6 months, you'll see the market get flooded with these, kind of tarnished cases. Because what happens, since it's sticky, the bubble wrap that was inside of the packaging, it kind of pulls some of the finish off. Now this one's, it's not too bad, but it's definitely a defect that should not have been shipped out. But they didn't really know until they shipped it out. So nobody's really at fault here, except for maybe TKL, but honestly, I don't think they've ever done a finished case before. So we'll either never see this again, or maybe they'll start doing like clear coats on top of them or something. But hey, anyways, we get the Adam Jones 1979 little design there. It says Gibson Custom. I would have preferred had they had just done a teardrop shape to match the guitar, but hey, that's just me. This is the way that Adam wanted it. But let's go ahead and get this VOS open. Wow, they actually did a pretty darn good job making this look like a vintage Silverburst. So it's got a slight greenish hue to it, but all at the same time, they also have some Adam Jones specs. But let me tell you, the very first thing picking this thing out of the case, this is nowhere near as heavy as the 70s or 80s Les Paul Custom. This thing's light. It almost feels neck heavy in comparison. But the original retail price on these guys were $5,999. Good luck ever finding one of these for that price ever again. They instantly sold out, as we've been talking about these past couple of weeks. The current market value on these guys seems to sit anywhere between like $9,500 to $12,000. So if you were lucky enough to purchase one of these things brand new, they were instant collectibles and a great investment. But you're probably curious, how does this vary from a regular Les Paul Custom? Well, first off, we get our pickups. Now, you might see this neck pickup is reversed. Normally your pole pieces are up here. The reason for that is if you ever find that your neck pickup is a little bit too muddy, apparently, if you flip that around, this brings it a little bit closer to the bridge so you can get a little bit more clarity. And then we get a Seymour Duncan here. We'll throw this thing on the workbench here in a minute to take a look at all of its specs. But something else you'll notice that's not necessarily 79 spec'd is you've got the thumb bleeder pointers. They weren't doing that at this point in time, so maybe Adam added those to his. But the thing that nobody's talking about is this. They reissued the diamond Posi-Lock strap buttons. These things only existed from about 81 to 83-ish. I mean, sometimes you can find them for a couple of years after that. Technically, it's not correct on a 79, but it's kind of cool that they reissued them anyways. But essentially, they were like a vintage strap lock system. They've got these points here that kind of hold your strap into place. Now, if we're getting really nitpicky here, when Gibson put these on from the factory back in the 80s, they would actually be facing up and down, not left to right. So that's something that Adam's changed on his. But different from a regular Les Paul Custom is you actually have a volute. They did an okay job on matching the original volute style. I feel that it's actually a little bit lower than it should be. On those guys, it kind of points out right there, but we'll compare this to a regular Silverburst a little later on. And then the VOSs get this little treatment back here. It's kind of like a little star pattern that's a little swirly thing that the aged and signs do not get. But what number did I get? You can tell on the VOSs by the last digits. 130, so I got the 130th out of 179 made. But your first 5 digits are actually the same one as Adam's. So his was made on 1979 on the 352nd day of the year. But this has to be the biggest thing that annoys me that Gibson got so horribly wrong. It's such an oversight, it hurts me to see it. I love what they did in order to number all these, that way VOSs actually had a numbering system, but in doing that, they messed up right here. So if you were to read this like a late 70s Les Paul Custom, since this is $4.99 or less, this would indicate a Kalamazoo built one. And if it was Kalamazoo made in USA would not be there. It'd be stamped vertically right here. So they kind of messed up on that. They should have started that at 5. So like number 1 would be 501, then 502, all the way up to, I think it would be like 679. So if we're getting really technical, I'll have to knock them on that if they were trying to be vintage correct. But hey, I think they did a pretty good job on this. The headstock's not exact. They could have used the larger custom logo that the 70s and 80s ones had. The truss rod cover's looking a little bit weird. And this does not have fret nibs because his was refretted. And it doesn't look like they ever drilled these at the factory for a pick guard, but do they include one? That's what I'm curious about. It's not looking like it, but they do give you a back plate if you want to swap that out. And then we get this little metal switch tip, which must be something Adam has on his original. And then you do get one of these mirrors like the aged and signs get. It looks like they just attach with a little 3M foam sticker thing. I kind of have some reservations about installing that. I really feel that that adhesive will affect the finish right there over time. So, I mean, if you want to put this on here, make sure you never want to take it off. But as far as case candy goes, we get our little pre-pack checklist. This is a really bulky COA. What do we got going on in here? Huh. That's strange. Why is it so thick and padded feeling? Because I don't see anything too different. You get your picture of Adam Jones right there with his original, I would believe. And your serial number. Very cool. Overall, I would say I'm pleased. They did a great job in recreating this for the VOS. It looks kind of like a vintage one, but yet still has some modernized appointments. Let's go ahead and move on to the aged and signed. Now I kind of got a funny story with the aged and signed. So if you remember, as I was telling you, it's really hard to find these things brand new. If you played by the rules and waited for Gibson's official announcement before, you know, looking for a dealer to sell you one, you were going to be left out. Pretty much the only dealer that played by the rules in America was Musician's Friend Guitar Center. So I was able to pick up one of each from them on launch day, but you had to be fast. But for whatever reason, my aged and signed is not actually supposed to get here till December. So it's like, I really don't want to delay this video till December. So I happened to look on eBay and I found one for like $2,000. It's like, who wouldn't? I'm just kidding. It's not one of the stolen ones. But I did take a look on eBay and saw some VOSs selling for like $8,000, which was, you know, pretty good price at that point. But it was from one of those Japanese brokers. And I don't know why I didn't think of it before. I need to check Japan out. And I just happened to get there right as they were listing it. Like as soon as I refreshed the page, it was there. It's like, oh my goodness, what great luck for me. And it was at one of the dealers that I actually work with quite a bit for buying other stuff. So after a lot of messaging back and forth, they're like, hey, we gotta check our stock, make sure that it's not already sold. Because Japan, as far as I know, they only got 3 of these. I was looking for number 19. They had 18, which was, you know, close enough for me. I would have took it. It's not necessarily perfect, but, you know, it's one number away from what I wanted. And then they also got 78. And 78 made me really happy because that's that first real official year of the finish. So I thought, you know, that's kind of cool for this run. But unfortunately, the only one that was left for me at this shop was number 25 out of 79. And I think that's pretty okay. And hey, I think I might have got lucky on this one, because this case doesn't feel sticky. I think this is one of the ones they probably quality checked it a little bit better because it went to Japan. Japan always gets the nicest stuff. Yeah, this case, I would say it's actually good. It doesn't feel sticky. I don't see any areas that have bubbled off. So I think it's fantastic for this review that you can actually see them both side by side. Once again, what we're looking for is like these little tear out areas, and this one does not have that. You can tell it's a little bit more glossy in look too. So maybe once they arrive to Japan, if they were sticky, they might have just sprayed them with something. Who knows? I'm kind of curious how this came unlatched, but whatever. Let's go ahead and open up the aged and signed. Interesting. So, the finish isn't quite as aged on this. This has a little bit more silver. But it does come straight from the factory with your little thing installed. Alright, so here's the real deal Big Daddy. So these were limited to 79 in production, and they were $9,999 brand new. Which sounds crazy, but, you know, current market value, man, these are kind of hard to judge. Most people are asking $30,000 now, but they're not selling. But man, they've got a lot going on here that we need to talk about. First off, in the Norland era, they used 3-piece maple tops, right? And sometimes, over time, the finish will kind of sink in the areas and you can actually see them. And I was curious how they did that. But it looks to me like they just took a razor blade and went straight down it like this. And unfortunately, what I'm seeing is it's not straight. So it's a little bit higher up here and then it goes down here. So I can tell somebody didn't actually know what they were doing when they were doing that. Like they didn't understand what that was. They might have just thought, okay, it's a finish check line. No, that's a seam line. That would always be perfectly straight. So that's something that kind of bugs me that they didn't get right. They've got his area of finish wear. That's probably because he plays it like this, so he sits like that. Surprisingly, not very much aging to our tailpiece there. Or the bridge for that matter, but I do like how they got the chewed up bits from somebody setting it up and everything. And the knobs do have some aging, that's pretty cool. They did a nice job on that. You'll notice that this does have the pickguard screws. Do they include one? Nope, doesn't look like it. You just get the holes because, you know, his original one would have the holes. And apparently his original was a custom wound Seymour Duncan, so his would not say Duncan on the bridge. But I do believe it's like the same pickup, or maybe it's been custom wound. I'll have to do some more research before we throw this one on the workbench. You just get some wear and tear all over on this thing, but the back of the headstock, so this time your serial number matches 100% perfectly. So now I can see why they actually changed up the VOS run, because then they would have accidentally had duplicate serial numbers. One of the VOS would have the same one as the aged. So I get why they did it, but they kind of messed something else up there at the same time. But we get Adam Jones's hand-signed signature right there, and then he numbered it at a 79. This is why I wanted 19, because then it'd be 1979. But we get 25. Get the Made in Germany Schaller tuners. His must be replaced on his guitar because those are not the tips that Gibson would have used. Looks like we get some stand rash on just that side of the neck. We get a little bit of finish checking. I actually saw one of these that got a flamed maple neck. I wish I could have bought that one. But yeah, they did an okay job on this. I thought this looked really bad in photos, but you know, in person, they did as good of a job as they could do when recreating neckwear. I mean, that all definitely lines up to where I would be playing. And this was actually the first guitar to come out of the new Murphy Labs division. Now, just to clarify things, Murphy did not age these guitars. Murphy would be in the title if that was true. Murphy Labs is essentially them just rebranding in-house aging to something that has Murphy's name. A little bit cheeky, but I guess I get why they're doing it. They're banking on his name, but if it was actually Murphy aged, these things would have been a lot more expensive. But on his original one, he must have like some sort of a bracelet that really dings up his finish. But the back here, I'm sure it's some sort of a buckle, but it almost just looks like they took bubble wrap and made it affect the finish. That's pretty cool. You don't At first, I did not think I was going to like the aged and signed version, but now that I've, seen it in person, I think they actually did a pretty good job, all things considered. There's a few things that they should have done better. Mainly, the only thing that sticks out to me is that seam line, because I was really hoping that they found a way to make the top just slightly separate enough that the finish would sink into it, but no, that's a finish check. So as these things age, they're gonna look really dumb, because then one of those will start to show up, and then you'll have two. Oh well, these are instant collectibles anyways. But here we go. VOS and aged and signed. And since this poor thing went from the USA to Japan just to be sent back to the USA, we actually get a special case candy for this one in Japanese. Cool. But our pre-pack checklist is in English because it was filled out here, as well as our COA. It's pretty much the same thing as the other one, it just says number 25 instead of the serial number. Oh, that's strange. The case was made in USA. You don't see that too often. That's nice. Now, most people would be scared senseless to send $10,000 out of the country and just like, well, I hope they send me this guitar that they say they have, but I'm pretty used to buying stuff from Japan, so I know it would show up. I've dealt with this dealer before, and that made it possible to get this review done, early November instead of late December. So I think I'm going to split this up into multiple videos. So this is the unboxing of the Adam Jones signatures. Tomorrow, we'll throw them on the workbench. We'll compare them to an original Silverburst. We'll get all the fancy B-roll shots and all that. We'll plug them into our playing demos. This would just be an hour-long video if we didn't split them up, and it would just be nearly impossible to make. But here's my first impressions on the Adam Jones signature guitars.